Good evening, good afternoon, good day. My name is Karen Casella. I'm the Director of New Student and Family Programs here at American University. It is really so great to have you here with us as we get to learn more about fraternity and sorority life. Now, many of you know that I'm a proud double eagle, but I actually never participated in fraternity and sorority recruitment. And I learn something new every time we offer this session. Before I turn things over to our presenters this evening, we have just a few housekeeping notes. So you're all entered into the session tonight on mute. You can ask a question at any time. Just type it into the Q&A box. We do have time reserved at the end of the session to answer your questions live. And finally, we will send a link of this recording of this session to everyone who's registered in just a few days. We'll also post it to our YouTube channel and on our website. And with that, Samantha, why don't I turn it on over to you to get this started?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Easby. I'm the Associate Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life, and I'm just going to pass it quickly over to Ayana to introduce herself, and then we will just jump right in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ayana Wilson. I serve as the Director for the Center for Student Involvement. Fraternity and Sorority Life is a part of our office here at American University.
So just before we get started, I just wanted to give a brief overview of how we envision our time together today. So first things first, we're going to start with just an overview of our office, highlight how these students joining organizations are supported through the university. We're kind of going to go over some terminology, kind of maybe words that you've heard or are hearing currently as your student is thinking about participating in sorority or fraternity recruitment or our intake processes, and then also go over some terminology which we may not use anymore. And then we're just going to go over a quick overview of all of our councils and what those mean and the organizations that fall under those councils. Kind of highlight some benefits of joining, go through the recruitment and intake processes, and then talk about what campus partners we work with with the Fraternity and Sorority Life office, and then just some general next steps for parents and families. And then we'll finish up with some Q&A. So please, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll work to get those answered. And if not, you can hold off to the end and we can answer any questions that you may have. So just a quick overview of our office. So obviously, Ayana and myself are kind of two of the key members of our office. And like Ayana mentioned, she's the director for the Center for Student Involvement. So under her portfolio, she has Fraternity and Sorority Life, but also student media, student government, all student organizations, and also graduate student organizations. Pretty much if it involves student engagement organizations, it is under Ayana's purview. And then we have myself, Nadir, and we also have a graduate assistant who our focus is really on that fraternity and sorority community, and that is the quintessential parts of our positions. So as I mentioned before, I'm the associate director. I currently oversee our Interfraternity Council and co-advise our Intercultural Greek Collective. Nadir McCoy is our coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life, and he oversees our Panhellenic Council and is also the other co-advisor for our Intercultural Greek Collective. And then we also have Erica, who oversees our new member series and then other marketing initiatives and any special projects that are going on in our office. And then now we're just going to talk briefly about some terminology maybe you've heard, are hearing, and then also some pieces that maybe are a little outdated.
Yes, thank you, Sam. So on the screen, you will see words that are used commonly in fraternity and sorority life. So if your students join one of our organizations, they may come home talking about these different words, and we want you all to be familiar with which ones make sense and which ones are ones that we don't use anymore. So any of my parents or families who joined an organization 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, you probably pledged. We don't necessarily use that term anymore when we talk about joining our organizations. So just keep that in mind whenever you're talking to your students. But just some highlights. A lot of our students will receive a bid. Basically what that is an extension of membership. So X organization is offering membership, and so your student would receive a bid. An informational is where they would go to get information about the organization before they make a decision about whether or not they want to join. Recruitment counselor, Rho Gamma, those are the members of our community who support potential new members through their process as they make decisions. Ritual is what happens whenever organizations are going through their education process. Ritual is not a bad word. It just means that these are pieces and components of our individual organization that you're learning now that you're about to become a member. So you all can see some of these on the page. A legacy is someone who is joining whose parent or family member was also a member of that same organization. And so there's a point of pride for a lot of folks if that is the experience that they're having. Well, these are just some key words that tend to come up day to day within fraternity and sorority life that we wanted you all to be aware of.
So now we're just going to jump into a brief council overview. We currently have 3 councils at the university. So our fraternity and sorority community, like I just mentioned, we're made up of 3 different councils. So we have the Interfraternity Council, our Intercultural Greek Collective, and our Panhellenic Council. No matter what council and organization is housed under, we really try to embody a couple of key values. And those are really chosen because all of our organizations have those basic underpinnings and recognize them as values of their individual organizations. So we really try to highlight brotherhood and sisterhood, leadership, community service and philanthropy, as well as academic achievement. All of our organizations are open to all students who identify with the mission and vision of these groups. And the organizations that are housed under the fraternity and sorority umbrella are considered social organizations, or social Greek letter organizations. You may hear that term thrown around. But I just want to highlight that there are a lot of professional, academic, as well as service organizations that also use Greek letters. And those are not under our office's purview. Those are under different offices or housed in the different academic offices on campus. And just some basic kind of statistics about our community at large right now. Our community fluctuates between about 10 and 15% of the campus body. Some of that is because in spring semester, we have our formal interfraternity and Panhellenic recruitment processes. So we are expecting a lot more new members during that semester. So we just have more membership in total. And then also, engagement fluctuates over the years as well. Currently, we have 25 organizations and 1 interest group on campus. And then our average spring semester GPA was a 3.384, which is higher than the all AU GPA. So just to jump in and talk about each individual council, American University has had social fraternities on campus since 1936. And currently the Interfraternity Council houses 11 of our campus fraternities. The council itself is led by a student governing body, which is made up of elected representatives from these organizations. Not every organization is represented because we only have 6 positions, but we try to make sure that all of our students have a voice and have a say in how the fraternity community is led. And then currently this community has around 300 members, and chapters are typically between 20 and 30 members. We do have a couple chapters that are lower than that and a couple chapters that are higher than that number. It really just depends on any given year and their recruitment processes. Next up, we have our Intercultural Greek Collective, and this council or collective houses our self-identifying culturally based organizations that have a history of supporting our Black students, our AAPI students, or Latinx students, and any other group that is kind of interested in belonging to that council. Our first IGC organization was founded on campus in 1977, and we currently house 7 organizations and 1 interest group. This council works together to enhance the experience of these organizations on campus. And currently this community has about 30 members, and chapters are typically around 6. Again, that number fluctuating depending on the semester we're in, and also just on their recruitment processes and the cycle they're in. And then lastly, we have our Panhellenic Council. American University has had social sororities on our campus since 1933. And the Panhellenic currently houses 7 of our sororities. The council, again, kind of like the Interfraternity Council, is led by a student governing body made up of elected representatives. And currently this community is about 500 members and the average chapter size is about 60. So again, kind of fluctuating depending on the semester as well as the year and interest. And then briefly, we're going to talk about the benefits of joining.
Yes, so this is one of my favorite slides because I get to brag on the experiences that students will have if they choose to join an organization. Within each of our individual organizations, there are leadership development opportunities. So one with on campus, and two, all of their national organizations provide leadership opportunities for them to develop and grow. Networking across our organizations and within their organization, being a member and being able to connect with someone else who's also a member who is studying in the same field is a benefit that happens when you join our organizations. Similar with career opportunities and mentorship, these all happen through membership. Scholarship, so we're very proud of our GPA here at American. And so you are with like-minded folks who also are passionate about their GPA. We do have GPA requirements to remain active and to join our organizations. So the minimum for American University to join is 2.5, but we have organizations that have a higher GPA requirement. So it's whichever one is higher in terms of being able to join our organizations. And these organizations, their involvement does not end when you graduate. All of our organizations have some type of alumni or graduate chapter, so they're still connected, supporting undergraduates and doing things within the community. And even though these are social organizations, they are heavily focused on service and philanthropy. So these are some opportunities to continue for those who are passionate about those areas to do. And then also campus engagement. We find that our students who are members of our organizations also hold leadership positions in other organizations that are not tied to Fraternity and Sorority Life. They're RAs, they're campus ambassadors. They're really engaged and connected on campus. So these are all things that are highlighted and elevated when your students choose to join Fraternity and Sorority Life.
And now we're just going to briefly talk about the recruitment and intake processes for many of our organizations, and kind of also give you some general information as well as our eligibility requirements, which Ayana previously just mentioned.
Right. So to be eligible to join a fraternity or sorority here at American University, you have to be enrolled full-time as a matriculating undergraduate student. Sometimes we will have high school students who are also taking college courses. They don't meet the eligibility requirement. You've got to be a matriculating student. You've got to be in good standing with conduct. So that means you're not on probation. You haven't been found responsible for any sanctions. And you have to have completed a minimum of 12 credit hours at AU. So a lot of places it's called deferred recruitment. And we do it like that here at AU to make sure the students have at least a semester to get their footing, to understand what they want to be involved in before they commit to joining an organization. Transfer students are eligible as long as they have 12 credit hours that are transferring in from a previous institution. And like I said before, a minimum 2.5 GPA on a 4.0 scale is required by our office. And if the organization requires higher, you would have to meet that requirement to be eligible for that specific organizations. Some general information we like to share with our parents and our families so that you can support your students if they choose to go through any of these processes. These are selective organizations. They get to choose their membership just like your students get to choose whether or not they accept it. So bids and invitations are not guaranteed just by participating in recruitment. There are no promises of bids or invitations. So if you're hearing that from your students, that's not what's happening. Please let us know as an office so we can provide support and make sure people are following the process. And then do your research. Like, what do the organizations stand for? What is the mission, vision, purpose of those organizations? What would it look like to be a member outside of just during your time here at American University? And ask lots of questions. We want students to make informed decisions so they're aware of what they're joining, so they can have the best of both worlds, being a member of the organization while they're here at AU as well. And then the last piece, we hear this sometimes, is do we have to be a certain specific type of person to join these organizations? And you don't. We just want you to be who you are. Like Sam said, we have a variety of organizations here at AU, and we believe there's something for everyone who wants to join the community. So be yourself, pay attention to what is attracted to you and who you attract, and we believe that you'll find your fit.
So now we're going to just briefly talk about each individual council's recruitment or intake processes. So just to start off, I'm going to talk about the interfraternity council process. Formal recruitment for the interfraternity council starts January 28th and ends February 5th with bid day. Recruitment kicks off on January 28th with our Meet the IFC event. So students who are interested in going through the process are able to come and meet representatives from every single chapter that we have on campus. So they have the opportunity to talk with current members, get a lay of the land, and then also receive more information about each chapter's individual events. Moving forward through the week, a student would be able to go to as many chapter hosted events as they would like, or as few as they would like, to get, a better understanding of what each fraternity is like, be able to meet the brothers and really see who they connect with throughout that week. Throughout the week, typically all of the events are open to everyone. Well, they are open to everyone. They're not typically open to everyone. They are open to everyone on campus, and then they do culminate. They have an invitation only round, and that's typically on Saturday or Friday, depending on the chapter schedule. And they will personally invite the students that are going through the recruitment to those events, and then they would have their bid night as well. All of the chapters will post their events on the Engage platform. I know that we've been talking about that since orientation, but that's where all your students can find all the information. We also currently already have our Meet the IFC event on Engage, so they should be able to check out and get any information that they need from there. But if they're interested in looking at individual chapters, those events will be starting to be posted soon, and they will take place during that week. There will be no events before that or after that are recruitment related events. All students who are interested in going through the process must register for recruitment. And there is a $10 registration fee, and registration closes on January 31st. You can find the link on our website, as well as I know the Interfraternity Council has posted it on their Engage page and on their Instagram, which I know is how a lot of students receive information right now. So it's in a lot of places, and students are it's really easy to sign up. There's not a lot of information we collect. Really, it's like name, your AUID, how we can contact you, and then just some basic demographic information. So pretty easy and pretty straightforward as they go through the registration process. And if they have any questions, they can obviously contact anyone in our office or at the Interfraternity Council.
All right, so I do see a couple questions I can answer really quickly in the chat. So one of them is, why do students have to return early for a rush in January? So Panhellenic recruitment happens the weekend before the spring semester starts. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't have a lot of space on campus. So if you think about 300 women plus our organizations all being able to manage that process over a 4-day timeline and not conflict with classes, that is why Panhellenic happens before the semester starts. So once we get started with the semester January 16th, there's no conflict with classes, there's no conflict with space to be able to hold a large enough locations for our members and for the PNMs, potential new members, to experience the process. And that specifically applies to Panhellenic recruitment. Those who are interested in IFC recruitment or who are interested in intercultural Greek collective recruitment, that process happens throughout the semester. This is very just specific to Panhellenic. So I just wanted to go ahead and touch on that really quickly. So one of the other councils we talked about, which is IGC, the Intercultural Greek Collective, their process is a little bit different. This is based on each individual organization. So we do not have a formal recruitment process that includes all of the organizations. Our groups under IGC will have an informational, a rush session where individual students who are interested in learning more about them can come and learn about that particular organization. And some of them will require you to provide, like, what's your GPA, your interests, all of those things as they make their selection. Others, it will just be, here's information about our organization. Once they complete that piece of the process, they select their members, and then they will start their education process again as individual organizations. That's the biggest difference. The other component is each organization is able to decide whether or not they're going to bring in new members each semester. Versus with Panhellenic, every January we have formal rush. All of our organizations participate. In IGC, each organization working with their national headquarters determines whether or not they're going to bring in new members each semester. So they complete their education process, and at the end of their education process, they have what they call a presentation of new members. So the AU community can learn who are the folks who join the organization and welcome them to the community. Interested students have a couple different options here. We always encourage them to go to the national website headquarters to learn more about the organization, and then also learn more about the chapter. All of our chapters under IGC have their own individual events where students can go to learn more about what their model, their mission is, and also find out what the organization is about in order to decide if that is a good fit for them.
So like Ayana mentioned previously, Panhellenic recruitment occurs before classes start, and PNMs or potential new members will have to be back on campus the evening of January 11th. So students are not expected to be back until 7 p.m. on that evening because we do kick off with PNM orientation. Formal recruitment begins Friday, January 12th. They will be in events most of the day and into the evening, and then it will culminate on Sunday, the 14th. During that time period, you can expect your student to be in events most of the day and have a pretty hectic schedule, but we do try and make sure we're fitting everything in before classes start, just for ease for the chapters and on the chapter side, as well as the potential new members going through this process. Students will attend events hosted by each sorority, especially on the first day. And then, as Ayana mentioned before, we do have a mutual selection process. So as the kind of days go on, sororities will have the opportunity to give their preferences, and your student who is going through will have the opportunity to give their preferences, and we match them up and we go through each day, narrowing down each number of chapters the student going through the process would go to, and culminating in preference night, where a student would go to a maximum of 2 organizations and then be able to submit preferences at the end of that evening. And really that process is so students can get the opportunity to know one another, really have an opportunity to engage and find out the chapter's values, see what is a good fit for them, as well as the chapters to see what students that they see really represent the values of their organization. And like with interfraternity council recruitment, for Panhellenic, you do have to register for recruitment. There's a $40 fee for registration, and registration will close Wednesday, January 3rd at midnight. And again, you can find the link on the Panhellenic Council's Engage page, our website, as well as the Instagram page for Panhellenic Council. And I do see that there is asking about dress requirements in the chat. For Panhellenic recruitment, the first day is casual. So I would say jeans, and they're given a t-shirt to wear by the Panhellenic Council. The next day is a little bit more dressy, so to speak. And then finally, the last day is more formal. So most of our women would wear a nicer dress or slacks and a top. So pretty straightforward, and all that information is also being distributed by the Panhellenic Council. And if they have any questions directly or want to receive any more information about dress requirements, they can reach out to the Panhellenic Council as well. And then I did also notice for Panhellenic recruitment in any of our organizations, or particularly Panhellenic, letters of recommendation are not required by any of our organizations. So we are not, I know that there's a big narrative around, especially maybe put into place by some of these big Southern schools. We do not have the expectation that any of the women going through recruitment have a letter of recommendation.
Sam, I'm just going to add 2 points really quickly.
Yeah.
One of the questions around letters of recommendation. So before, when I talked about the Intercultural Greek Collective, some of those individual organizations may require a letter of support from someone who's a member of the organization, but all of those requirements are on the website. So if you go to the membership section on any of these organizations we have listed under IGC, their website, they will say specifically what it needs to be included if someone is seeking membership. And then a dress requirement for fraternity recruitment, it's based off of the event. So if the men are having a ping pong tournament, you don't need to wear a suit to the ping pong tournament. Usually it is pretty casual. And then towards the end, if you are invited back to their final events, they may have a formal dinner or presentation. So you would do some slacks and a tie, but they are pretty clear about it as you go through the week. And I would tell your students to base it off of the type of event that they're going to attend.
Yeah, we do ask the chapters as well to be pretty clear if they are required to do something. I know fraternity recruitment, as I explained, it seems really casual, and I do recognize that each chapter does their own events, but we meet with each chapter to really make sure that they are giving the appropriate information to anyone who's going through the process. So contact information, what they should wear each evening. So all of those things are actually typically listed in their engage events. And if not, there's an appropriate person for them to contact that's listed under each engage event. So we really try to encourage our chapters to be really transparent about expectations and what that looks like. I also just saw, when you say we, does our office choose what students go to? We do not have any say at all into what students go to what sorority or fraternity. It is a true mutual selection process. So your student would have the opportunity to express what chapters they're interested in, as well as the chapters will have the opportunity to invite members back. So it truly is a mutual selection process. We go through the evening, and essentially what our role in that process is to just do the administrative piece of matching up the students going through recruitment and the chapters who they express interest in inviting back. So really, it's just that administrative piece, trying to make sure, and also, to be fair, honest, to be very efficient in this process, so we can make sure that the students are going through the process in an efficient manner and making sure that the process isn't extended.
The only thing that I'll add is our office does do the eligibility checks. So it will not be the students who are doing conduct checks or grade checks, it's us as professional staff. And we would just let chapters know these students meet the eligibility requirements, which means that they are viable candidates that they can extend bids to if they choose to. So that's our role in managing eligibility. But once it comes to the selection process, that's managed by the student organizations.
And then just some other questions that we get around recruitment and intake processes. So we can highlight a couple of things. Finances, joining an organization does require a fee. Typically they're called membership dues. And just for you all to get a rough handle, interfraternity council is roughly $200 to $800 a semester. Typically that larger number is in your first semester of membership, because there are quite a few one-time fees for being a new member. So sometimes, and typically you get things out of that, right? Like your part of your fee goes to buying your the pin for your organization and different things like that. And then you'll see it typically decrease. IGC new member fees are roughly $1,000 to $2,500, and then active dues are $250 to $400 a semester. And then under Panhellenic, our new member fees are typically $600 to $800, and then active dues, so after that new member period, are about $400 to $900. And those membership fees go to planning events on campus. So all of our organizations have sisterhood and brotherhood events where they do an activity, or they do crafting, or it pays for food. They also typically have a social event, like so a formal or maybe a mixer. So that pays for venues and different spaces. And then also they do philanthropic and service endeavors, and typically there's an upfront cost associated with the planning and managing those events. So those fees do go to other pieces. I also just want to highlight, there are scholarship opportunities available through national organizations. They should receive information about applying to those scholarship opportunities from the chapter president or whoever handles the finances for the chapter. And those are kind of applied or granted on a national basis. And then housing. We don't have any official housing at American University. We do not have a Greek row. I'm sure you would have seen that on your campus tour if we had one. We do have many organizations that live together. And sometimes they'll refer to it as the X house, but is not officially recognized by the university. And then time commitment. I know we kind of mentioned a little bit of this earlier. I would say for each organization, weekly, they have a chapter meeting. So that's really a formal business meeting. It's typically an hour a week. And it's usually on a Sunday or a Monday, depending on the chapter. And then typically some of our other events are not mandatory. So usually a chapter tries to do like a sisterhood or brotherhood event, probably once a week or bi-weekly, really trying to build that community. And then they typically do like one big signature event a year. And then they'll typically have like a formal each semester. It really does depend on the organization and how many events that they choose to put on. We typically recommend that each chapter really try to prioritize like what's meaningful for their chapter and make sure that they're not over programming, but they can have as many events as they want. Typically, not all the sisterhood and brotherhood events are mandatory. So your student would be able to pick and choose which ones that they were willing to attend or want to attend. And also, none of the events are strictly mandatory. If you have an excuse, if you have a family emergency, if you have a class, all of our organizations are very flexible with that commitment piece.
So a couple questions came from finances. So one of them is, how do we receive and pay the bills? So we as an institution are not managing the finance component once they join the organization. So this does not go onto their AU account where they have to pay. The only part that we manage is if they're going through formal recruitment or IFC recruitment is the registration fee. And so once they register online, there's a link to go ahead and pay that amount. Once they're accepted into an organization, the organization itself will let the individual members know how to pay their chapter dues. So that varies organization by organization, but they do have a formal process because they are collecting dues from every member of every chapter and all the different universities that have chapters. So that will vary organization by organization. There was a question about financial aid available. There isn't a formal financial aid option for those who choose to or want to join these organizations. There are some scholarships available for individual students, but again, that's organization by organization. So there isn't an application to fill out for this process. Really, the first part is recruitment, which is the fee that Samantha mentioned earlier for the recruitment process. But again, once your student is going through recruitment, they can ask us specific questions about financial obligations and support for paying those financial obligations based off of the organization. And then if your child joins and decides it's not a right fit for them, are there fees to get out of the sorority? There are no fees to choose to no longer be a member. What I will say is if your student joins an organization and they pay their dues in September, and then they decide in November that they no longer want to be a member, the process for getting anything back would be through that organization, not through the university. But there are no fees tied to choosing to no longer be a member of the organization. Okay. I think we can keep going around the fees. The next piece that we wanted to highlight is some of our campus partners that we work with here at AU. Who support our students who are part of the Fraternity and Sorority Life community. So our Center for Diversity and Inclusion does a lot of training and programs for our individual organizations and the community overall around support, access, inclusion. That is important. That's something that our students have told us that is important. So we partner with them pretty heavily. In terms of accountability, our organizations are held to the same standard as our recognized student organizations on campus. So there's a violation as an organization. That process is managed through our Office of Student Accountability and Restorative Practices. One thing that I do want to highlight that office also does is restorative circles. So if there's some conflict that's happening within the organization, there is support on campus to help them navigate that conflict so that all of our students are having a positive, healthy experience. I'm hoping that most of you are familiar with our Center for Wellbeing Programs and Psychological Services. They support our individual students. They also do pop-up sessions and programs. So things like how to help a friend. When we think about our student leaders who are taking on leadership roles, they do some training around that. Housing and Residence Life, we do have some spaces in the residence halls that support Fraternity and Sorority Life, and they have some chapter spaces there. And then the other ones are offices that our organizations partner with frequently. So I talked about philanthropy and community service. Our Center for Community Engagement and Service is a great office that they get to partner with whenever they are raising funds for a particular topic or want to do some service. And then obviously we're on this call right now because our parents and families are important stakeholders and partners in this. And so we want to make sure you all have the information that you need as well. And then the last one is we have a positive relationship with our campus police department, providing support. So if there are questions around the size of an event or things that are happening in our neighborhoods, even though we don't have formal houses, our campus police department helps us navigate those nuances and challenges to support the students having a positive experience.
And then lastly, we just want to finish with a conversation about what you can do as parents to support your students if they're going through the fraternity or intake process for fraternity recruitment, sorority recruitment, or intake processes that we just previously talked about. So the first one is listen. You are your child's confidant, and we really appreciate any information that, if there's something of concern, please contact our office and let us know. We are open to any and all conversations, and also just listen to the experience they're going through. I think, when you're 18, 19, even 20 years old, going through a process like this is challenging. They feel like they're making a huge commitment and decision. And sometimes they really just need someone to listen and be there and hold their hand through that process. So they feel like they're confident and able to make the appropriate decision. Don't be afraid to ask questions or ask for help. If you need any information, any guidance, our office is always there to help you receive the appropriate information that you need and you feel that you need to help support your student anyway. And if we can't find the answer for you, or we don't have the answer, then we can find someone on campus that can help you with that question. Really encourage your student to find the organization that works for them. Again, that goes back to what Ayana was talking about, being authentic and being your true self through these processes. We want every student to go through this process and feel like they can be their true self and exhibit their values, have real conversations to find the people that they really fit best with. So really encouraging them to be their authentic and true self, and really trying to kind of hone in on what is important to them and what they are looking for in an organization. And then also lastly, just being cognizant of the financial commitments that are associated with this. As we mentioned before, there is a membership dues for all of our organizations, and we do recognize that that is potentially a barrier. So just being aware of that financial commitment is really helpful when talking with your student about moving forward in this process and being a member. And then we are open to questions. Unfortunately, the lovely Camille was supposed to be here and she is sick. So we have Karen instead, which is amazing as well. But apologies for the incorrect information there.
So we do have a couple questions that we can go through, and feel free to continue to add questions in the chat. So is it possible for a student to go through the rush process and then decide not to join a sorority? Absolutely. So the student, when they receive a bid, that is their option to say, yes, I would like to receive a bid from this organization, or no, I'm not interested at this time. There is no commitment prior to that point. So they have the ability to go through the entire recruitment process and then decide maybe it's not right for them. Will the students have mandatory study or service hours as a member? So mandatory study hours is not something that we have. There are some service or philanthropy requirements based off of the organization. And again, that varies. We have a lot of them that do have study hall hours, which is really to provide support for our members who either need some additional support or to reiterate the importance of academic and scholastic achievement in our organizations. But that varies organization by organization. Let's see. Sam, can you confirm the time of orientation? Because I think Instagram says it's 7 p.m. Oh, tonight we said 7 p.m., but on Instagram it says 8 p.m. So Sam can check that out. While I keep going through these questions, there's a question about student athletes. Part of it really depends on which organization or process they want to experience. With Panhellenic recruitment, the days are pretty structured. And in order to maximize your ability to see all of the organizations, it is a challenge to complete it. So it's hard to make a decision and for the chapters to make a decision if you haven't been able to see them and vice versa. However, there are opportunities to join the organizations outside of formal recruitment. And what I've seen is that some of our student athletes prefer that process because it works better with their schedule. But if there is someone, if your student is a student athlete that has an interest, definitely connect them with myself or Sam or even Nadir, who was on a previous slide, and we can talk about how to best support them through that process. What percentage of women who apply are not accepted? We don't have the percentage off the top. That's something, if you shoot us an email, we can get it for you. Really what we focus on is if a woman is not offered an organization that she's interested in, how can we help them get connected on campus in another facet? Fraternities and sororities are not for everybody, and we recognize that. But the majority of women who go through the process and are fully invested and involved will get at least one bid into an organization, and it's up to them whether or not they accept it. We do have a smaller number of women who either won't get a bid or they don't accept the bid that they are offered there. We did talk about cost. Again, that varies. You're hearing a lot of that varies by organization because each organization has different focus, different needs, and the size of the organizations also has impact. Another difference is, for example, with our intercultural Greek collectives, some of our culturally based organizations, the cost is highest when you initially join. And then as you continue through for the next 4 years, it's based off of every year, it's $250, it's $400 versus the $1,500 that you may have paid to join the organization. And that initial amount covers like the cost of your documents and your pen and your first leadership conference. So there's different components of what's covered in that cost, and the organizations will communicate to you what the dues are going for. Let's see, what else do we have here? And Sam, feel free to jump in once you find that answer.
Sorry, I did just find it.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I believe it's actually at 8 p.m., but I had in my, so that's on me. I'm sorry about that.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Some questions about initiation with fraternities. So one of the things that we like to highlight is that each of our organizations, in order to be here, because they're guests on campus, have to be non-hazing organizations. They have to have that as a part of their headquarters, their national organization, and we require it as an institution. And anything that's happening during initiation should not involve physical labor, pain, mental labor, pain. That's not part of the process. And if any of your students are saying that that's what's happened, then we definitely need to know about that immediately so we can address it. Realistically, what happens at AU is that you have sessions where you're learning about the organization. There's some opportunities for bonding development between the men or the women who are joining the organizations. And then initiation is you're now officially a member of the organization. Here's information about us that only members know. That is the highlight, the big pieces that aren't secrets that happen with our organizations, but there should not be any level of violence, any significant like sleep deprivation, eating things that are not appropriate. We don't want that. The organizations themselves don't want that. And anything like that that happens, we like to know immediately so we can address it and make sure that we don't have that on our campus. So there's a question about matching process. Sam, you want to take that one with Panhellenic?
Absolutely. So how the process works, kind of how I mentioned previously, as we go through the different rounds, we kind of narrow down a potential new member's options based on the chapter's preferences, as well as the student going through the recruitment, their preferences. And on preference night, which is really the morning, but we call it, preference day, your student would potentially go to a maximum of 2 organizations. So during that process, your student would be able to exhibit their preferences. And then on bid day, they would only receive one bid or one invitation to join. And that's based on their preferences as well as the preferences of the chapter. And that's kind of how that process works. Again, it's mutual selection. The chapter gives their preferences, and as well as your student would give their preferences, and then we match them up administratively.
So will your child know costs before they accept the bid? So while they are going through recruitment, one of the sessions should be talking about the financial costs and obligations of joining an organization. If your student has not heard that information, they can ask about it. They can also follow up with us as administrators in the office to make sure that they have that information before they make that decision. That is one of the things that the organizations talk about to the potential new members to make sure there's no confusion. They don't want to offer a lot of bids, get excited about the yeses, and then there's a financial issue where they can't actually join the organization. So that definitely comes up throughout the process.
And then I saw the question, if a freshman is not able to join in the spring, can they join in the fall semester of their sophomore year? Again, that kind of varies depending on the council. So for example, interfraternity council, they always have a fall recruitment period. So all of those organizations, if they choose to go through recruitment, they can opt in or out. And then some of the chapters may choose not to opt in. I will say historically, the majority, or not, if not all of our chapters have opted into the fall recruitment process. So they've had an opportunity to meet anyone going through who's interested in joining, as well as the chapter, the potential new members have that opportunity as well. Panhellenic recruitment is a little bit different. Our formal process is only in the spring. And then some of our chapters may be open for informal recruitment in the fall. And that's a big if. Sometimes some of our chapters are open, sometimes they're not. It really just depends on their current membership, what that looks like, and if they choose to actually participate in recruitment. And then, like Ayana said, the chapters that are in the Intercultural Greek Collective, they do their intake process in collaboration with their national headquarters. So they could be doing a fall recruitment cycle. However, they may only choose to do spring 2024. It really depends on what they come up with when they collaborate with that national headquarters. Dress for fraternity. Oh, sorry, Ayana.
You're good. I see a question about a set number of new members. So again, each council is a little bit different. With Panhellenic, there is a percentage number that they want the chapters to meet across to make sure that there's equity across our organizations. With Interfraternity Council and Intercultural Greek Collective, we as an office or university do not have a requirement for a number of new members that the organization can take. So it can be 2 people, it can be 20 people, as long as they meet the requirements and the organization can support that amount of new members.
And then just to jump in, the dress for fraternity recruitment, typically it's pretty casual, except for their closed invitation round. And sometimes that would just be kind of dress pants and a tie. But every organization is very transparent about what the type of event is. So some of their events, could be a basketball tournament and things like that. So obviously we don't want your student dressing up in a suit to that event. So all of our organizations tend to be really transparent about what the type of event and what the expectations of dress are. But typically it's very, very casual until that last invitational round, where it could be a more formal dinner. But typically, again, it's just dress slacks, a nice shirt or button-down shirt and a tie.
We do not have any mandatory requirements for members of organizations to live in a particular house because we do not have formalized housing here at American University. We do have some of our organizations that will rent a space together, but that's usually 4 to 5. We don't have any spaces that will fit more than that because they are renting, whether it be from a landlord or living in an apartment, but there is no mandatory requirement about where they're living per our office or the university.
And then I think we answered this one about if a freshman's not able to join in the spring, can they join in the fall? Again, kind of just to reiterate, depends on the council. Typically fraternities, our interfraternity council does have fall rush or fall recruitment. And some of our chapters will potentially opt out, but the majority of them do opt into doing that fall recruitment process. Panhellenic recruitment depends solely on the chapter. So you may see things in the fall about a chapter having a recruitment events, and they're typically a lot more informal, kind of more come to an event, get to know us, and they get to know you, and still that mutual selection process. But however, we cannot guarantee that there would be any chapters taking new members in the fall. And then also for, again, our IGC council, it really depends on the organization individually, because each organization kind of manages their intake recruitment process in collaboration with their national headquarters. So some of the chapters may have it, may not. It really just depends on what they determine the best timeline is.
I see a question about eligibility. So the way that we manage eligibility is based off of how the university counts credits. So if AU counts transfer credits towards like official college matriculating credits versus classes that they may have taken when they were in high school, we would count that. The way that I read it, if they're coming in with 10 credits from their previous institution, then it would be the 10 credits. And so we do have a 12 credit minimum that would be required for anyone to participate during the spring semester. That does not mean they're not eligible to join. It just means that the spring semester may not be the semester that they join our community. And we're definitely happy to chat with the student and look at the transcript to be able to articulate specifically what their eligibility would be. And then who funds this event? Does AU fund the bigger events? So AU does not fund the recruitment process for the individual organizations. We help manage the recruitment processes. So the dues that are paid by, for example, Panhellenic recruitment, that money is used for the cost of food, the cost of reserving rooms, all of the operational components. So we work with the students to make sure that those are covered. That's what that cost goes towards. Same thing for recruitment for all of the groups. The individual organizations manage their own budget. So their education process, once they've gone through recruitment, is managed by the individual organization. So the point of joining an organization for us, honestly, is connection. We want all of our students to find connection here at AU. So whether that be through a fraternity and sorority, whether it be being a part of a residence hall association or the president of the Happy Club, we want them to find their fit. And Fraternity and Sorority Life is an opportunity to do that. So thinking about what is the experience that the student wants to have. And one of the benefits we talked about before with Fraternity and Sorority Life is a lifelong connection that they'll have with members of their organization here at AU and how it connects them beyond just AU. It can be a member in Tallahassee, Florida, a member in Anchorage, Alaska. They have that shared experience because they're members of the same organization. And I think those are all of the questions. Y'all have asked some really great questions this evening. Thank you for being so engaging and participating. And we'll do some housekeeping, but again, Sam Easby, Ayanna Wilson, Karen also put the link for the website. You can also contact us directly if you have a question that's very specific to your student, or you just want general information. We're here to provide support. And make sure that your student has the best experience possible if they choose to join our community.
We do have time for, last question or two, but if I'm correct in this, the very best thing for students to do with questions about the recruitment process is to start by applying to be a part of the recruitment process, right? If I remember correctly, once those students have registered, then they will get all of the details that they need for all of the events, their deadlines, dress code, detailed schedules, all the rest, right?
Yes, and we want to hear from your students. We appreciate how you all as parents and families are supporting them and want them to have a great experience. We want to talk to them. So any question that they ask you, send them our way. We are happy to help them get connected and involved. There's no question that's too big or too small. So please, please, please send them to us so that we can help them provide support.
I saw a couple questions here and submitted in advance too. So since the spring recruitment for the Panhellenic Council starts on the 11th, that's the first day students can move back into their residence halls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they've got all day for that, right?
They've got all day, so that we purposely put the P&M orientation in the evening so they have all day to move back into their residence hall, and then also, get dinner, do what they need to do, and then attend P&M orientation. And then they get started on Friday.
That's excellent. I know, and classes don't start till the next week, but I would say to families, if that date is giving you like anxiety because it's a conflict for your travel plans, have your student email housing@american.edu to see about requesting an earlier move-in.
And let us know. We don't want any student to feel like I'm going to be late for orientation, so that means I can't participate in Panhellenic recruitment. We are here to work with and support your students, so we want to make sure that we can do that as they go through the process.
Well, I'll say this team, I think you did a great job answering the questions as they came through. And I think this is probably the fourth time I've been through this presentation. And I think you covered all of the typical questions that even tonight's parents hadn't necessarily thought to ask. So thank you again for your support of our families, and families, thank you for your support of our Eagles. And as we said earlier, the session was recorded. We'll share out a link to view that recording, and you'll always find this and all of our webinar sessions on our website and on our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.